Abdul's day always started the same way. Long before the sun rose over Abuja's busy streets, he would arrive at the grand office building of Zenith Holdings, his mop and bucket in hand. The marble floor shone under his careful touch, but no one ever noticed. To them, he was invisible. Grace, the young, ambitious manager, strutted past him that morning, her heels clicking loudly on the floor. She barely glanced at Abdul, her lips curling into a smirk. "Ah, Mr. Invisible, don't forget to clean the coffee spill in the meeting room. It's been there since yesterday." "Useless," she said, tossing the words over her shoulder as though they were nothing. Abdul only bowed his head and continued scrubbing. He wasn't here to argue or defend himself. He had a job to do, and he did it quietly. But deep inside, he felt the sting of her words. Still, he said nothing. The office was buzzing that week with news of the upcoming merger. Everyone whispered about who the new CEO might be. "I hear it's someone big," one staff member said. "Maybe a foreigner," another guessed. Grace, overhearing them, adjusted her blazer proudly. "Whoever it is, I'll make sure they notice me. Mark my words." By noon, Grace stormed into the staff lounge, her face red with frustration. "Abdul, where's Abdul?" she snapped. He emerged from a corner, wiping his hands on a rag. "Ma, I'm here," he said softly. "Why is my desk still dusty? Don't you know how important I am? Or are you just too lazy?" she yelled. Laughter rippled through the room as her colleagues joined in, throwing mocking comments his way. Abdul simply nodded, picked up his cleaning supplies, and left without a word. Later that night, as Abdul mopped the empty halls, he overheard Grace talking loudly on her phone. "This merger is my chance. I'll make sure the new CEO knows I'm the best. Imagine being on the executive team. Abdul and his kind will never understand what it means to succeed." Abdul paused, his face unreadable. Then he smiled faintly, as if he knew something they didn't. The announcement of the gala electrified the office. Employees bustled about, gossiping and speculating on who the new CEO might be. The air buzzed with excitement, but not for Abdul. He quietly went about his duties, listening to bits of conversation as he cleaned. "They say the new CEO is one of the richest men in Nigeria," a staff member whispered by the water cooler. "Or maybe it's a foreign investor. Either way, this is our big break," another replied. In the corner, Grace was practicing her introduction for the CEO, rehearsing lines like an actress preparing for a performance. "Good evening, sir. My name is Grace, and I've been instrumental in driving results for this company. I believe with your vision, we can reach greater heights," she said, her tone dripping with confidence. "Perfect," she told herself, checking her reflection in the window. She turned to Abdul, who was quietly sweeping nearby. "Make sure the gala hall sparkles." "Abdul, I won't let your incompetence ruin my big moment," she sneered. Abdul simply nodded, hiding his expression as he swept the floor. The days leading up to the gala were a flurry of activity. Workers polished, planned, and prepared. Grace was particularly relentless, barking orders and criticizing everyone in her path. Abdul, as usual, bore the brunt of her insults. "You're lucky they even allow someone like you in this building," she spat one afternoon when he accidentally brushed her arm with his mop. But Abdul's silence began to unsettle a few observant employees. One of the security guards, Tund, leaned against a desk and watched him work. "You're to come for someone who's always insulted, Abdul," he said one evening. Abdul looked up briefly, his eyes holding a quiet intensity. "Sometimes silence speaks louder than words," he replied, his voice steady. Tund chuckled, shaking his head. "You're a strange one." On the night of the gala, as employees put on their best clothes and practiced their best smiles, Abdul finished his shift like always. But this time, as he walked away, a small smile played on his lips, a smile that hinted at a secret, hidden just beneath the surface. The gala night finally arrived. Zenith Holdings spared no expense. The venue was grand, adorned with shimmering chandeliers, red carpets, and tables set with fine silverware. Employees mingled, their laughter filling the air, each one eager to make an impression. Grace stood at the center of it all, dressed in an elegant gown that sparkled almost as much as her ambitions. "This is it," she murmured to herself, clutching a glass of champagne. Her eyes scanned the room, watching for any sign of the mysterious new CEO, whoever he is. "He'll know my name by the end of the night." The atmosphere shifted when the MC stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. The crowd hushed and anticipation thickened. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. It is with great honor that we introduce the new CEO of Zenith Holdings, a visionary leader, one who values not just profits, but people. Please welcome Mr. Abdul." The room froze. Grace's glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as all heads turned toward the entrance. Abdul walked in, dressed in an impeccably tailored black suit, his posture commanding and his expression calm. Gone were the janitor's overalls, replaced by an air of authority that left everyone speechless. "That can't be Abdul," someone whispered. "The janitor," another gasped. Abdul ascended the stage, the light catching his polished shoes, and the glint of a family crest pinned to his lapel. He took the microphone and surveyed the room. "Good evening," he began, his voice steady and commanding. "I am Abdul, son of Zenith Holdings founder. For the past 6 months, I've worked here undercover as a janitor, observing how this company treats its employees, from the lowest-ranked staff to the executives." A wave of shock spread across the room. Grace felt her knees weaken. She clutched the table for support, her face pale as Abdul's gaze lingered briefly on her. "I've seen kindness and respect," Abdul continued. "But I've also seen arrogance, cruelty, and a lack of empathy. Tonight, I will share my observations, and those who lack integrity will face the consequences." The room fell into a tense silence as Abdul's words hung in the air. Grace's heart pounded. She had been exposed, and she knew it. The tension in the room was suffocating. Abdul continued, his calm voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "This company is about to undergo a transformation. But before we move forward, we must address the behaviors that have held us back." Grace's palms were sweaty as Abdul spoke. She forced a smile, hoping to mask her growing fear. Surely he wouldn't call her out in front of everyone. "Not here, not now. I have met incredible people in this company," Abdul said, his eyes scanning the crowd. "People who showed kindness, even to someone they believed was beneath them. To those people, I say thank you. Your actions reflect true character." A small wave of relief swept through the room for some, but others shifted nervously. Grace's chest tightened, and then Abdul's tone hardened. "There are those who thrive on belittling others, those who see power as a tool for mockery instead of leadership. To those people, let me be clear, this is not the culture we will foster moving forward." The room was deathly quiet. Abdul's gaze landed squarely on Grace. She froze. "Grace," he said, his voice firm but calm, "you taught me an important lesson. You taught me how destructive arrogance can be. For months, I watched you demean others, mock their struggles, and measure your worth by how low you could push those around you. Your behavior disappointed me deeply." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Grace's face burned with shame as whispers filled the air. I didn't know," she stammered, her voice barely audible. Abdul's expression didn't soften. "That's exactly the problem. You didn't care to know, but I know, and I remember everything." Tears stung Grace's eyes. "Abdul, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please give me a chance to prove myself," she pleaded. Abdul's lips curved into a faint smile, not of anger, but of understanding. "Grace, apologies are a start, but actions speak louder than words. The choices you've made have brought you here. Now you must live with them." As Abdul turned back to the crowd, Grace realized her worst nightmare had come true. Everything she'd worked for was slipping away because of her pride. The room was silent as Abdul finished his speech. The weight of his words lingered, heavy and unavoidable. Grace remained rooted in place, her once confident demeanor shattered. Around her, colleagues exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what Abdul's revelations meant for their futures. Abdul stepped forward, his voice firm yet compassionate. "This company will no longer reward arrogance or cruelty. Instead, we will uplift those who demonstrate integrity, empathy, and a genuine desire to contribute." He gestured to a group of lower-level staff standing at the back of the room, many of whom were now wide-eyed with surprise. To those who showed kindness in small, quiet ways, your efforts did not go unnoticed. "You will be given the opportunities you deserve," Abdul announced. A round of applause erupted as the employees smiled, their faces lighting up with hope. Abdul paused, his gaze settling once again on Grace. "But for those who chose mockery and pride over humility and respect, changes are coming. Grace, your behavior is a reflection of the very culture we are leaving behind. Effective immediately, you are being removed from your managerial position. You'll have a chance to work your way back, but only if you can demonstrate true growth." Grace's heart sank. She opened her mouth to protest, but the lump in her throat silenced her. Humiliated, she lowered her head, unable to meet the stares of her colleagues. Abdul turned back to the crowd. "This isn't about punishment. It's about building a better company, one where every employee is valued, regardless of their rank. This is the Zenith Holdings we will create together." The room erupted into applause, but Grace felt none of the hope that filled the air. As the gala ended, she slipped away quietly, her once bright future clouded by regret. Meanwhile, Abdul stood by the exit, shaking hands and thanking employees for attending. Tund, the security guard, approached him with a grin. "Ogre, I knew you weren't an ordinary cleaner," he said. Abdul chuckled. Sometimes it takes stepping into someone else's shoes to see the truth. As Abdul left the hall that night, the staff buzzed with new energy. Grace, sitting alone in her car, realized she hadn't just lost her position, she'd lost the respect of those around her. For Abdul, it wasn't just the beginning of his leadership, it was a chance to rewrite what leadership truly meant. And for everyone else, it was a lesson they would never forget.